Hello and welcome to the Stew with JT Brew on the Dynasty Pros Football Channel. I'm your host, Justin Taylor. Today in the Stew, we are discussing the Tennessee Titans, their draft, fantasy sleepers, busts, upcoming schedule, what we think 2023 is going to look like. I've got Sam Waldorf here from Dynasty Pros Football to help me out. Do me a favor, hit that thumbs up, like, subscribe button. The Stew begins now.
You up on trades and why you move, you ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing, racking up points, makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release, we started with the mock draft and now we making a mockery of the leaderboard. Quite obviously not a scrub, so start an institute, make evaluations like a commissioner do. It's to the point your wife make you watch in a different room. Update your roster and pick and choose when you get some news. Not much that we enjoy more than sipping brew, sifting through new statistics to make it to our end zones through different routes. Universities, institutes, down to homies who click in groups. I introduce you to the Stew with JT Brew.
Once again, thanks for joining us on the Stew with JT Brew. I'm your host, JT. Got Sam. Thanks for joining me from Dynasty Pros. It's been a while since I had you on the pod, so thanks for joining me to talk everything Tennessee Titans.
Of course, man. Happy to be back. Took a little hiatus, but the season starts now for everyone. It's time to get going, so I'm stoked.
Yeah, it's right around the corner. I just thinking about it today. I was like, man, it's going to be here before we even know it. It's camps are going to be going. We're going to be looking at everything there. So what we're taking to do, we're diving through all the NFL teams, kind of looking at their draft sleepers, guys we like for the season, and kind of where we think these teams will finish. Give me a quick breakdown. I'd like to have people that either cover the team or are fans of the team. Kind of give me an idea like how you kind of became a Titans fan and started rooting for them, because you're not from Tennessee and you're not from Houston. So kind of give me the background on that.
Yeah, for sure, man. So as a kid who grew up in Montana, there are no teams, right? So you got to pick one at a young age and stick with them. At least that's always how I've thought about it, is pick one and stick with it. And when I was a little kid, probably 4, 5, or 6, Eddie George was my favorite player. And so ever since then, I've been a Titans fan. And, I think Eddie George mixed with some early success when I was watching, the almost touchdown, Kevin Dyson, that almost had him.
Oh, yeah.
Still stings. But, yeah, I mean, big Eddie George fan, big Air McNair fan, Derek Mason, Frank Wycheck, all those guys kind of going back to what was my childhood for the team, and been following them ever since. We've had some rough years, but I love Vrabel as a coach, so I've been a lot happier since he took over the reins, for sure.
Yeah, that's one of those things you got to be happy about as a Titans fan. At least you feel like you got a coach. Like, sometimes I think these teams, you're looking around, like they're switching coaches every year, and then they're wondering why they struggle. I'm like, you just can't have that much turnover and ever getting consistency. I like Vrabel as a coach a ton. I remember those days. I was living in Missouri at the time when when the Rams beat him in the Super Bowl. London Fletcher makes the stop. They make the stop at the goal line. Crazy. Yeah, it was insane living in Missouri at that time when they got that win before the Rams moved and everyone lost their mind. But yeah, Tennessee's had some great teams over here. Eddie George was an absolute stud out of Ohio State. Was a big fan of him in high school. Just, he was one of those first tall, linky running backs, but like once he found an opening, you just saw that track speed. He got those knees up. Just a lot of people weren't like him back then. They had a lot of smaller, running backs back then, or you had a big bruiser like a Christian Okoye. There just wasn't a lot of guys that were like the physical makeup of like an Eddie George.
Yeah, I mean, he could do both, man. He really could. He had the speed, but there's a reason he was so highly touted coming out, and just loved watching him. Still have an Eddie George jersey to this day. I'll put on when I need a little good luck fantasy weekend. I don't wear it every weekend, but when I need the luck of the big win or something, I'll put it on.
All right, let's jump in here. Start things off with the NFL draft, kind of what they did this year. So starting things off, everyone was wondering what they were going to do at pick number 11. They ended up going with Peter Skoronski, the offensive tackle out of Northwestern. Came back with Will Levis in the second round, the QB out of Kentucky. People were trying to decide, was he going to go top 10? Were the Titans going to take him at 11? They end up trading up in the second round and getting him at pick number 33. Tajay Spears, running back out of Tulane, third round pick, 81 overall. Josh Weil, the tight end out of Cincinnati that they've been hearing good things about, fifth round pick there. Jalen Duncan, offensive tackle out of Maryland in the sixth round. And then Colton Dowell, a wide receiver out of Tennessee Martin in round 7. So that was what the Titans went through. Offensive line is something that's been on a lot of Titans' mind. A lot of people talking about just they don't think this group's going to be very good at all. So Skoronski almost felt like an absolute need pick. Like they had to go with O-line there at 11. What do you think?
Yeah, of course, man. I think early in the offseason, they didn't bring back Lawan. They let Ben Jones go. That's their center and their left tackle. So I think for me as a fan, it was pretty obvious that going into the draft and or free agency, both of those positions were going to be addressed. Obviously, in free agency, they brought over Dillard from the Eagles, which I thought was a good signing. I think Dillard may be slightly overblown because it's easy to look good on that Eagles team from last year. But I do think he's a quality, he's an NFL starter, which is not necessarily the easiest thing to get on the O-line. So I loved Skoronski as a pick. I thought they got great value on him. A lot of people had him go in as the first tackle off the board or closer to 6, 7, 8 in the first round. So for him to be there at 11, I thought was great value. Jalen Duncan, I'm not going to tout him as some savior for the Titans offensive line, but he played a lot of games in college. I think he's a great depth piece. And I think kind of like we were talking about Vrabel earlier, the Titans they're a very well-coached team, and they seem to outperform your expectation for them year after year, almost to a fault where, maybe they needed a couple higher draft picks to reach their ceiling. But Vrabel's just such a dang good coach that they win those close games and they outwork you and they outfight you, and they're freaking mean, dude. They are not a nice team. And I think they're on the right path with the O-line. I liked the signings, and I think it was just time to get younger. Lawan and Ben Jones has been there for a while. I think they just needed a new group.
We're going to move on to Will Levis here. I've been on record plenty saying I am just not a Will Levis fan. I just don't see it with him. I feel like I've seen too many guys like this before that had the big body, had the big arm, weren't super successful in college, and everybody just kind of thought they were going to eventually put it together in the pros. Kind of when they took Levis, what was your feeling there? Were you excited? Was it mixed feelings? What's the word out there on the message boards? The Titans fans, are they liking Will Levis? What do you think?
Yeah, I think in a vacuum, if you told me before the draft that the Titans ended up with Will Levis, I don't think I would have been as excited. But I think the context matters a lot, and I think to state it clearly, Will Levis in the first round, I hate it. Will Levis in the second round, I'm cool with it, man. I mean, they need someone to replace Tannehill. I think they've met their peak with Tannehill. And so I think they'll probably start off with Tanny, see where he takes them if he's having a good season. He's had very efficient stretches, so it wouldn't surprise me if Tannehill could have another season or two in him. But, I think Levis has the upside. He definitely has all of the downside, like you mentioned. I don't think I would ever say he doesn't have that. But I think why not go for it, man? And if you get a good pick next year, there's some other QBs there for the taking as well.
Yeah, it's like I said, I'm not a Levis guy. If I'm the Titans, I'm happy I at least got him in the second. At 11, like you said, I would have been real upset taking him at 11. Because at 11, you're going, this is our guy. We're bringing him in. We're replacing Tannehill. Mm-hmm. Tannehill's got to be gone. I think Tannehill still has a little something left. I think he's a veteran. The guy just is solid. So I like him. If Levis, I just told some the other day, if Levis ends up being awesome, I will eat my words big time on that. And I hope the guy has a good career, but I just don't see it for him. But like you said, take the shot in the second round. If it doesn't work out, you go back to the drawing board next year. My thing is at least you got Tannehill. You didn't wait till you were done. When Tannehill was absolutely smoked before you drafted a quarterback, and now you're going, all right, we got to play this guy and see what we got. At least now you can play him, and it gives you a chance to really evaluate Levis in practice early on and throughout the season to see kind of what progression he's making, so that going into year 2, you can really make a decision. Is this guy, because they saw with Malik Willis last year, everybody kind of thought he was a project. I couldn't believe people were talking first round with him last year. I thought that was crazy talk. And then we saw it. He dropped in the draft. He got a chance to play, and he had all the problems that everybody thought he might have. So not to say he can't still work out of that. He only had a year. He's only had a year. It takes time to grow as a QB sometimes. But I guess at this point for the Titans, don't you just take as many dart throws at QB as you can and hope one hits? And if it doesn't, you just keep going.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think people forget that Tannehill has actually been a better player than you would think when he's been healthy over the past 3 or 4 seasons, right? Like, I'm not saying that they were ever the Super Bowl favorite, but let's not forget they were the 1 seed a couple years ago. Now, I didn't think they were the favorite, and no one did. Everyone was still picking the Chiefs, but they almost had the Chiefs a couple years ago. They were up on them, and the Chiefs came back, as Patty does. But I think Tannehill fits what they want to do. I think they want to, control the ball. I think they want to run the ball with Derrick Henry. And that was the really difficult thing, I think, that they probably were thinking is, half of you wants to kind of come at it from a dynasty standpoint where you're like, oh, well, I'll just tank, man. I'll just tank and I'll get Caleb Williams. And you're like, well, it ain't as easy to do in the NFL as you think, because you have fan bases, you have tickets, you have veterans on that team. You don't think Jeffrey Simmons and Derrick Henry are going to not want to try to win every freaking game. They don't want to go out there and try to lose. And I don't know. I think I'm happy that the Titans are a slight underdog this year. I think that's going to work for them.
Yeah, I think you're right. And again, when you're in a division like the NFC South that's been pretty poor the last couple of years, you're in the mix every year in that division. You don't have to be a powerhouse to win the division and make the playoffs. And that's the name of the game, winning and making the playoffs. And again, like you said, there's a lot of bad teams out there right now. For the Titans to absolutely bomb and get below some of those teams, I think might be pretty difficult. And then again, you got some good players on that team that aren't just going to go, okay, yeah, you're right, we should just tank it. Like, that's not the way it works in football. You got too many guys playing for contracts, playing for that next contract. It just, as we see, it just doesn't happen in football like it does in some other sports, like in basketball, where you literally can just bench the guys and then you're just playing other guys. It's just not as easy in football. Let's jump in the running back, Tyjae Spears. He's another guy that people really loved him coming out. Then the medicals came in about his ACLs, basically not having any in 2 knees, but still a super talented guy, really impressive at Tulane. I think kind of jumped on a lot of people into a lot of people's minds with that USC game. We had that big game against USC, 3rd round pick, pretty solid value. I've talked to a lot of people, Dynasty, they're like, oh, I'm real worried about how many years I'm getting out of them. But I've had other people like, hey, you're not getting a lot of running back anyway. I might as well take the 3 or 4, hopefully, good years he's got left on his knees before he ends up probably being an early retiree. But he can give me a couple quality seasons. Do you kind of see it that way?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think people are just overblowing it. It's like, yeah, he has some previous knee injuries, but like, let's not pretend that once a running back turns 26, dynasty owners throw them off the cliff anyway. So I think my point has always been with Spears, I may be higher on him than most, but like, he has the chance that if either Henry goes down, he could be a great year 1 guy, or if Henry leaves and he takes over, we've seen the Tennessee running back be a top 10 guy perennially all the time, right? Now, he isn't Derrick Henry, but he has playmaking ability. And just for where he's going, I don't really see why he's getting all the hate. Like, it would be one thing if you had to take him in round 6, round 7 of a startup, but like, I've gotten him in a couple's round 11, round 12. You're like, how is that a risk at that point? Like, I'm trying to remember, I had a draft the other day, and I took Tyjae Spears in round 11, and like, he's going around like some wideouts, some tight ends, Cole Kmet, Elijah Moore. Like, I like those players as well, but it's not like those are certified studs going at that point in the draft. So of course there's going to be risk. That's why he's being taken in the second round of dynasty drafts, the third round of the NFL draft. He wasn't a first round pick. Like, let's give the guy a break, and he has the upside. So why not give him a chance?
Yeah, he was a guy I wasn't super high on in rookie drafts. I don't think I got him anywhere, honestly. But he's a guy I'm coming around to. I've definitely taken him in some redraft leagues as a handcuff. I just think he's got a chance to get some playing time even without a Derrick Henry injury. I think he gets some reps in there. I think they want to work him in. And then if Henry goes down, it's like, wow. I mean, it's like wide open running back room for him. And we've seen what some of their backups have done in the past. I mean, was it John Hilliard? I mean, he had some really good games in there when Henry went down. I mean, Derrick Henry's a guy that we need to talk about for a minute. He's past that 28 season that everybody yells about, that year 20, 28 years of age. He is falling in redraft leagues big time. I've done a bunch of charity draft leagues of late, and he's getting into that early third, mid third, late third. I've even seen him drop into the fourth in a couple drafts, and that just seems pretty crazy for Derrick Henry, especially in a redraft. I can understand if you're in Dynasty and you're ready to move on because you're like, hey, I got to get something for him before he's finished. But I've got a couple Dynasty teams that are a little bit older, and I've decided at this point I'm going till he runs off the train tracks. I'm taking Derrick Henry. I'm not looking to get any value. I don't want a third rounder for him. I'm just going to keep him and play him until he can't play anymore. And I think that for me, that's my strategy with Derrick Henry, unless you're a total rebuild and there's a contender willing to give you something decent for him.
Yeah, I'm with you on Henry. Redraft, I think that value, if he's going in the third round, man, that is absolute nuts. That dude, honestly, he should probably still be a turn 1-2 player in a redraft league. And even earlier in the first round, if you want to take him, because yes, the wheels could come off, but also he has RB2, RB3 potential. I don't know if he has RB1 potential in a PPR, in a standard, sure, without the catches. And dynasty wise, I'm totally with you. I think if you're contending, there's no price for him. He's more valuable to you than whatever price you're going to get. If you're total rebuild, I did take over an orphan this summer, and I had Derrick Henry, and I tried to get like a first for him, and no one was really biting. And so I ended up actually swapping him for another Tennessee Titan who we can discuss in a little bit, which is Treylon Burks. And I was ecstatic to get that trade. But I think that's what I would go for. I think owners are going to be a little more afraid to give up a first round pick for someone with a little sketchness. Not to be, I do still think he has the upside, but it could fall off real quick. And if you're able to swap him for someone as a rebuilder, I think that's the trade I would go for. Or even look down the line and like, maybe you're not getting a 24 first, but maybe it's a 25 first, or maybe it's a 26 first. Even so, part of rebuilding is just getting good players off of your team so you can get higher picks as well.
Yeah, let's talk. Been hearing some good things about Josh Wiley out of Cincinnati, the tight end 5th rounder. Hearing they like him a lot. They want to get him on the field. I can see that happening. Austin Hooper gone to the Raiders. Chig is a guy that everybody is high on. They're talking, is he, low end tight end 1? Is he a tight end 2? I think he's got huge upside. Obviously, he's got the athletic profile, but I wouldn't be sleeping on Wiley, especially in deep leagues or start 2 tight end leagues. He's a guy, especially if you're in a dynasty with a taxi squad. That's one of my favorite things to do is draft tight ends and stash them on that taxi squad. Give them a couple years to develop. If you got a league where you can put them on there for 1 or 2 years and let them sit and then pull them off that 3rd year, that's one of my favorite things. But he's a guy, wasn't really on my radar in this tight end draft class, even though I really love this tight end draft class. I think it's one of the better tight end draft classes in a long time. But he's a guy that wasn't real high on my list when I was originally looking at it. But the more and more I look at him, the more I like him. And the more I like him in Tennessee, in the fact that I can see them running a lot of 12 personnel with 2 tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to get on the field. Let's not forget, like you said, Austin Hooper's gone. Jeff Swain's gone as well. And those were both of the guys that they were running in packages with Chig last year. I could almost see Wiley kind of stepping in more into that Chig role from last season, right? where Chig played little fullback, tight end 2. They moved him around a bit.
Mhm.
He wasn't necessarily the tight end 1 all of last year because he was still battling with Hooper. He didn't really take over some of the snaps till later in the season. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that Wiley he's not a blocker necessarily. So I think his goal is to be used as a pass catcher, whether that's as a tight end 2, maybe it's a big slot. The Titans love to run the ball. They want big bodies on the field at all times. So yeah, if you can throw him on there, he's a late pick. But like you said, like tight ends, I'm exactly with you, man. Tight ends are the epitome of what a taxi squad is for. Load that thing up with all of the tight ends you want. In 2 years, you'll have a better idea if there's something or nothing.
Oh, let's get to the big news. DeAndre Hopkins. I was a little surprised by this. I mean, it makes sense as far as like target share and what he could get in the offense, and the fact that they've been good. I know people are down on him this year on where they might finish, but as a Titans fan, you got to be ecstatic about the DeAndre Hopkins signing, as Treylon Burks really kind of looked like the only thing they had in the wide receiver group. And this obviously boosts them. And you would think it actually helps Treylon Burks in that he's not going to get all the attention by himself.
Yeah, I think the hate on Treylon Burks with Hopkins landing in Tennessee is going too far. I truthfully do. I think people are overblowing that. I love DeAndre Hopkins. I think he's a great player. I do think he has a couple productive years left. Are the Titans the Tennessee Chiefs? Of course they're not. Or not the Tennessee Chiefs, sorry, the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not, but there is absolutely no one there to catch the ball. Absolutely no one besides Burks, Hopkins, and Chig. And Chig is an upside play. He's not even he's not a dominant target share guy yet. So just like you said, I mean, this is Dynasty. This isn't redraft, right? We don't have to worry only about this season with Treylon Burks. We're able to look forward, and DeAndre Hopkins is a great wide receiver. Burks is going to get easier coverage. He's going to, not to kind of do just like a generic statement, but he's going to learn something from Nuke. He's not just going to not pick up tips and tricks from one of the best wide receivers in the NFL over the last decade. And I think another thing that people are always talking about is the Titans are extremely run heavy, which is totally true. But I think two things can still be true. Number one, let's look back to 2020, I think it was, when the Titans had A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown was wide receiver 5, I want to say. And they had Corey Davis still on the team, and he was wide receiver 28. I think that's a great example of in a run-heavy offense where in 2020, the Titans ran the ball more than they threw the ball, and they were still able to have 2 top 30 wide receivers. Now, I don't expect a wide receiver 5 finish from DeAndre Hopkins, but that also means that him and Burks could finish maybe both in the teens or both, 12 and 21 or something. They're both going to have very large target shares because they're going to be on the field in 2 wide receiver sets, 3 wide receiver sets, and they just don't have too much competition to battle with targets. And the other thing that I want to bring up is I just have a hard time believing that you don't go out and get DeAndre Hopkins if you don't want to maybe throw the ball just a little more. And that might just be, like a summer hot thing that everyone's going to get on, but they're trying to win games. You don't go get DeAndre Hopkins to not win games, and they might be in a couple more shootouts now that the Jaguars are going to put up some more points. And we'll see what happens with the Colts with AR, if he comes out hot or if he takes a bit. But this division can be taken and it can be won. I'm not scared of the Texans. I know you're a Colts fan, but this is not, they have a rookie QB. It's going to be a learning process for Indianapolis. And the Jaguars are great, and they had an incredible season last year. But the Titans almost had them, and they were playing with Josh Dobbs. Let's not forget that the game came down to Josh Dobbs, and they almost took him down and had that game. So I'm not counting him out. And I think Hopkins as a football signing, regardless of fantasy production, is great for the Tennessee Titans.
I think it says a lot about what the Titans think about themselves this year. They definitely are not going into this thing going, we're rebuilding. we're in a rebuild mode. If you go out and sign DeAndre Hopkins, that you're not thinking rebuild. And again, we talked about it. You just got to make the playoffs. If you can win the division, even if that is 8-9, as we saw last year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 9-8. I remember the Seattle Seahawks quite a few years back when everybody ripped on them because they made the playoffs, winning a division at under 500, and everyone said, "Oh, worst team to ever make the playoffs." Then what they do? They win it and won a home game in the playoffs, because they won a division and got a home game. So you just need to get in, and I think this division is one of the most wide open divisions in all of football. I could see it literally going so many different ways. I mean, a game here, a game there, and I think it completely changes everything. Let's talk about that just a little bit here. Coming into the season, I think the Titans, as you said, Vrabel, he's been the best coach in this division for quite a while. And he has kind of felt like he's willed them to wins. They've won close games. The games that you're like, I don't know if they're going to get that one, they've snuck out. And they've just beaten teams that maybe they're not as talented as, but they've just outcoached other teams. So to me, it feels like no matter what, even though I'm down on the Titans a little bit this year, I still think they're going to be in the mix. And again, being in a division where I don't think anyone runs away with this division, I think it's going to be interesting. Right now, their over-under win total is sitting at 7.5. It's minus 102 for the over. Under is minus 120, so money's a little bit on the under 7.5. I've been looking at that number, going through the schedule, and I really can see this team. I originally, first time through, I had them at 5 wins. But going back and looking at the schedule, if Tannehill stays healthy, if Henry stays healthy, and now you add in DeAndre Hopkins to what I was worried about the passing game, this team could get to 8 or 9 wins pretty easily. If they go in and they win 2 games against the Texans, say they split with Jacksonville, I'm a little higher on the Colts than some other people, but I also am in the same boat where I've said over and over again, I think the Colts can win 10 games, but I also would not be shocked if they won 4. They have so many games on the schedule that are going to be, right there. And with a rookie quarterback, are you going to get that close win, or are you going to lose all those close games? So I could see if they end up winning 2 games against the Colts, I mean, right there, already you have 5 wins. And that's not even going out of the division. And the nice thing about the division this year is that they have a pretty easy schedule as far as the NFC South is concerned. They're playing the AFC South's playing the NFC South, which is pretty huge because you have 2 of the worst divisions playing each other, which to me just is classic NFL. I mean, it's like, let's throw the bad teams all against each other and let's see what craziness can happen and what team comes out on top. Because I think both those divisions have 8-9 or 9-8 winning that division written all over them. But let's just kind of walk through the Titans schedule, see what we think here. First game at New Orleans. That feels like a toss-up game to me. At New Orleans is tough. New quarterback, Derek Carr. I'm not as high on the Saints as some other people. And you're going to have a healthy Tannehill, a healthy Derrick Henry. That game feels like a toss-up game to me. I could go either way there. Then they're at home against the Chargers. Noon game. Typically, I would say Chargers there for sure. But these are the type of games the Titans win. They end up winning against a West Coast team in an early game where it's like 10 a.m. their time. They're getting up at like 6 a.m. their time to get ready for the game. People, I think, highly underestimate that. I know these guys are professionals, but man, that level of change, flying, getting up early, that stuff affects you. So again, late in the season, that's a Chargers win for me for sure. Early in the year, Titans can win that game. They can win that game. So that's 2 toss-up games right in a row. Then they go at Cleveland week 3. I've been I'm on record as saying I'm down on Cleveland this year. I just don't see. I just feel like they got bad juju. I feel like they got a lot of talent on that team. I just think it's gonna fall apart. Something tells me I just feel like something's gonna fall apart there, and they're not gonna be great. So again, that's number 3 at Cleveland early in the year. To me, again, toss-up game. So again, I look at this schedule. I just think there's so many games that they can win. Game 5, Cincinnati. That should be technically probably a loss at Cincinnati or home for Cincinnati. You think Cincinnati wins that game, but again, you got them at home, and that's what you want to see. Got that little bit of advantage of being at home. At Indianapolis, that's a toss-up game. I got the Colts winning that one in my projections, but if they can't stop the run and Derrick Henry's on full tilt, it's going to be a long day for the Colts at that one. Long, long day. Baltimore, they got him at home. Can't beat that. I like Baltimore in that game, but that's going to be a close spread, and that having them at home. Actually, sorry, that's the early game. That's in Europe. That's the 8:30 Europe game. So that's a toss it out. I think those Europe games are just you never know on what team travels the best, what team doesn't go out and get stupid when they're on the road. I mean, that's a toss-up game. Bye week at home for Atlanta. I think Atlanta's in the same boat. They feel like a 7-10, 8-9, 9-8 team. Atlanta at home, that's going to be a low-scoring, pound-it game. Both teams pounding the rock. Then you go at Pittsburgh in a night game, Thursday night game. I feel like that's a Pittsburgh win, but the Steelers have a history of blowing those types of games. You get at Tampa. I don't like Tampa this year. That's a winnable game. Then you go at Jacksonville. Say they lose that one in the split. You're home for Carolina, which I think people are overrating right now. I don't think Carolina is as good. Vrabel knows Frank Reich, coached against them at the Colts forever. So that's going to game. He's going to have a decent idea. Then you're home for the Colts. You got to figure at least a split in that series. Maybe they win both. At Miami's probably a loss. And then you're home for Houston, home for Seattle, which I like Seattle a lot, but getting them at home is a whole different ball game. Getting them at home in December than going to Seattle in December. So again, that's going to be a close, tight game. At Houston should be a possible win, and then home for Jacksonville. So the schedule isn't crazy difficult. I mean, you look through this schedule, who made the playoffs last year? The Chargers, the Bengals, Jacksonville, Miami. That's it. And you got a lot of those games at home. I don't believe in this Titans team, like I said, but man, I could see them going 9-8 and winning this division. I could totally see it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, like you said, there is some luck in the division they drew in the NFC, but let's not pretend like some other team didn't get the NFC South last year and some team gets it every year, right? Let's not play that game. It happens to everyone. It's the way the schedule works. And so I think the combination of that, division games are tough, man. Division games are Titans football games. They are hard. They're mean. They want to pound you. And the thing about the Titans that it's their best quality, it's their worst quality, is that if they're playing Titans football, they can beat anyone. But sometimes if they get behind, they can't play Titans football, and they can get in rough situations where they're maybe not meant for really, really pass-heavy game scripts if they get down 14, 17, 21, like the Bengals game. That could get rough. But if you're telling me it's 7-3 Titans midway through the second, that game's a toss-up from that point on, man. That's the kind of game they want to play. They want to feed Henry and make you fight him on the line, man. They want you to come at him and play smash mouth. And, it's going to be great for fantasy and it's going to be great for the Titans, but there is nothing better than having Houston as 2 of your last 4 games, man. Let's not pretend that if they're 7-7 going into those last 4 games, that getting Houston twice couldn't be the difference between them making and missing the playoffs. And week 18 in Jacksonville, we'll see. That could be the division, just like it was this year. Last game of the year, basically, for the division on the line.
Yeah, I think 3 of the last 4 games in the division is just monstrous. I mean, they could have a chance where it's in their hands. Like they determine their fate. And again, I just think, the fact that they're playing the NFC South and the AFC South this year, I just think it adds to the mystery of what's going to happen this year because, again, both really toss-up division, probably the most 2 toss-up divisions in all of football as far as who can win. Teams in both divisions can win the division with under 500 records.
Mm-hmm.
But it's set up where some team could bust out. If somebody gets hot and they start playing well, they can win close games, defense battle. They can make it happen. I mean, right now, currently, Jags are minus 155 to win the division per FanDuel. 310, plus 310 are the Titans. They're number 2. Colts 550, Texans plus 1,000. Like I said, the over-under wins right now 7.5. If you had to just put the money down right now, are you going over or under on the 7.5?
Oh, I'm taking over all day on that, man. And that's not even a fandom thing. I just think, like if you're telling me, I think they could easily go 3-1 against the NFC South. I'm not going to give them all 4. They'd go 4-0 for all I know. Let's say 3-1, and let's say they go 3-3 in the division. And I don't think they're going to go 3-3, but I'll be generous and say they go 3-3 in the division. That's 6 games. They only got to pick up 2 more in half of a season. Like, they're going to come away with 8, 9, 10 wins and I think surprise people. I'm not expecting them to go, 13-4 or whatever. But let's just not forget that this AFC is very good and it is very stacked. But what does that really mean when you dig into it? What that means is that people are going to be losing games to each other. And I think the wild card race is going to be very, very tight because, we got Denver, Kansas City, the Chargers all in that division. I don't know if the Raiders really scare me much, but then we have, the Bengals, the Steelers, the Ravens, the Browns. Like, those divisions are going to be tight and someone has to win and lose every division game. Like, there's a loser to those games, meaning teams are going to have losses, and maybe the Titans sneak in at 9-8, 10-8. That's kind of where I'd put them. 9-8, 10-7. I think that's what you're looking for if you're trying to win that bet. But then you even have like the backdoor cover of them only getting 8 wins, missing the playoffs, but still winning the bet of 7.5 over. So it's just not that many games for a well-coached team.
I agree. The biggest knock on them for me is the defense. The defense has been great under Vrabel, and this is possibly the worst defense they've ever had. Now, not to say they can't coach up, not to say players can't step up, but that's the one thing that has me worried because they've been able to pound the rock. Tannehill has been good at QB. They've been able to win a lot of close games. That's where I'm worried about is the defense. But I also think the defense is a kind of a question mark for a lot of teams in the division, which I think is like whoever gets that little bit of edge, whether it's turnovers, takeaways, that kind of thing can make a huge difference. But like you said in the AFC, I think the AFC, it's going to be really tough for a team to win 12, 13 games in the AFC this year. I really do. When we did our preseason projections on the stew, when we went through every division, our win-loss record, do we take over-unders, all that. I think there's a ton of teams that are going to be right in that 9-8, 10-7 range in the AFC, and it's going to come down to a lot of tiebreakers. So if you can be in that range and get yourself in the mix, I think it's definitely possible because I don't see anyone really running away because the bad divisions are bad and the good divisions are pretty good. And I think you just see teams beating each other up. And I had people, kind of railing me a little bit because they're like, I can't believe you think the Colts can go 9-8 or 10-7. And I was like, I believe it because of the schedule. The schedule works out for them. But also On the other side of that, if they fall apart, I absolutely could see one of the other teams in this division doing the exact same thing. I could see the Titans turn around and going 10-7 if they sweep the Colts and they sweep the Texans. Because again, now you're right there in that mix, and you're playing the NFC South, which are really winnable games. And so I think this division, almost more than any division, has the biggest variation. I could see every one of these teams outside the Jags. I think the Jags win at least 7. But I could see any team in this division realistically winning 5 games or winning 9 or 10 games, depending on how the season flows, injuries, all that. If the Titans get hurt, if Henry gets hurt, something happens to Tannehill, I could see this team just absolutely folding the second half of the season. But if those guys stay healthy, and now with DeAndre Hopkins, a legit threat, that if you get in those close games down the stretch and you're Tannehill and now you have someone to go to, someone you can count on in those big situations, that to me raises the Titans' profile quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think what's keeping their win total down, and it's totally fair, is the exact situation you just brought up. Is what if some of their older players go down? What happens to them? But I do think they have this second outcome where Tannehill goes down and, Will Levis comes in, and not that he's going to light the world on fire, but let's not pretend that isn't a chance. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but Levis would come in and Hopkins, Burks, Chig, Henry, he might be slinging that thing around. And if they get hot, they get hot. And to your point on the defense, I agree, man. The defense has been up and down for years with the Titans. They look amazing, and then they just get absolutely dominated one week, mostly through the air. They're usually very, very good in the trenches. Simmons is almost as good as Chris Jones. He just doesn't have the notoriety because they haven't had the success that the Chiefs has had. Not anything against Chris Jones. Chris Jones is an absolute monster, but Simmons is very, very good. And I think a lot of their defense will come down to, can their corners develop? They have a couple second-year guy, third-year guys. They've drafted some in the past couple seasons. Can they stay healthy? Can they improve? And let's see how healthy Harold Landry is, right? It's not that long ago, 2 years ago, he looked like a top 5 outside linebacker in the NFL, man. He had 12 sacks. He looked very hard to block, suffered not a fun injury, wasn't in a game all last year. But if he can return and get another 10, 11, 12 sacks, that's a guy they were kind of missing, right? They signed Bud Dupree. It didn't work out. Probably one of John Robinson's, nails in his coffin for why he is not their GM anymore. But they're going to fight, and they're going to be in every game. And just like you saw last year, they were playing with no quarterback play for the last 3 or 4 games. And they missed Tannehill a couple games in the middle of the season. And they almost beat the Chiefs with Malik Willis. They almost beat the Jags with Joshua Dobbs. Like, that is not something that a poorly coached team does. A poorly coached team folds and they're done and they don't have a chance. But I think Levis is a chance if Tannehill goes out. I don't think I expect him to be, some rookie sensation. He's not going to do what Brock Purdy did. But I think he at least has the arm to give them a shot, unlike Willis last year, where it's just looked like he couldn't even throw the ball more than 5 feet past the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, talking about his defense, Harold Landry, he's a guy I wanted to kind of highlight. He's a total buy for me in IDP leagues. People are kind of forgetting about him. The injury has people worried, but he's going at a really nice value right now where you can almost steal him. And like you said, 2 seasons ago, he was on the up and up as like one of the, a guy that everybody's like, this could be the next like stud outside linebacker sack artist. This whole season, I love him. I've been picking up anywhere, especially in leagues like Sleeper MFL, where now he's considered defensive line as an outside linebacker rush. He's not just a linebacker. I think that just pushes his value even higher. So he's a guy I'm definitely As far as IDP, I want him. Jeffrey Simmons, like you said, defensive tackle stud. If you're in a league that has to start a defensive tackle, he's got to be on your list. He's got to be top 5. He's young. Chris Jones, again, amazing. Jeffrey Simmons is a younger version of him. If you have a chance to get Jeffrey Simmons in a defensive tackle league, especially if you do any kind of premium for tackles and sacks for defensive tackles, he's got to be. I said top 5. He's definitely top 5. He might be top 2 or 3. I mean, he's the guy. He's the guy you want. He's a stud. They got the Danico Autry, veteran, old Colts player, always been good. He's been a great fill-in IDP guy, so I like him. My big worry about them is who in this linebacker crew steps up and becomes their Keith Bullock. You know, Keith Bullock, one of my all-time favorite Titans, a Syracuse guy from back in the day. Just absolutely loved him when I first got an IDP or teams where you could pick one defensive player. Keith Bullock was my guy. Tackle machine, love him. Who's their linebacker that's going to step up? They've brought a couple guys in. Nobody really with just a great history. And then, like you said, that's secondary. Super questionable. They got some young guys who could step up and really surprise, but if they don't, that could be the undoing. Roger McCreary, nickelback, solid numbers last year as far as tackles, passes defense, stuff like that. But if you look at his PFF numbers and some other things, he was ranked like one of the last DBs in the NFL as far as one of the worst grades. So he's the guy's got to improve. Christian Fulton, second rounder in 2000, is kind of slotted in that thing. Caleb Farley, I mean, first round pick from 2021, hasn't really completely shown it yet. They want him to, kind of step up. They did sign Sean Murphy Bunting from Tampa Bay, hoping he gives them a boost. Safety, Kevin Bird's been, that solid guy forever and ever. He's getting older, but he's still, he's a guy, if you're playing an IDP redraft league, throw a Kevin Bird on your roster at the end of the draft. People are just forgetting about him because he's older, but he's a guy that puts up numbers. And then the biggest question next to him is Amani Hooker. Again, an ex-Colts player. Guy's got talent. He's really struggled to stay healthy his whole career. And maybe Kevin Bird can bring this group together. But that's my worry. The quarterbacking in the NFC South, or AFC South, has gotten much better. They got rookies still. But that's the question. Is their cornerback play, can it hold up against, passing offenses? And it's the same thing, I think, with the Colts on the other side. I think that's the biggest thing for them. I think that the difference between them winning 9 or 10 games and winning 4 games could absolutely be the secondary, because they're the same situation with the Titans. A lot of young guys, and they need them to step up, but they need them to step up now. They cannot wait on them. If they have to wait on them, it's gonna be ugly until they get better.
Yeah, the linebackers are rough. They let some guys walk. They brought in, I might butcher his name, Aziz Al-Shair, I think is the correct pronunciation, from the Niners. The new GM came over from San Francisco as well. So I'm sure they're hoping he can step up into a bigger role for the Titans. He did actually have a couple years ago 100, combo tackles, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily solo tackles, but a big tackle year. But they're shallow. They're definitely shallow at that position. They have a guy from last year, Gibbons, played some games. He's an undrafted guy. I think with the linebacker core, you just got to hope Vrabel can coach him up, right? Let's not forget he was a linebacker. Mm-hmm. And the secondary, you're exactly right. That's my worry. That has been my worry for years. When they lose, they're getting beat down the field. Their corners are getting beat. And it doesn't matter how good your pass rush is if guys are wide open very quickly into their routes, and you're getting burned for long plays.
Let's jump into kind of our final thoughts on the Titans. Kind of give me your final wrap as a fan, as an analyst. Where do you think this team's going, either this season or the future? Kind of give me your final thoughts on everything Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning of the offseason, as they started letting some of their veterans go, I thought this might be more of a rebuilding year. But I think they're still in it. I think the Hopkins signing is really the last thing to pay attention to, that they're trying to win games. You don't bring in DeAndre Hopkins and try to lose games. That's, he was sold by Vrabel, and I wouldn't be surprised if the culture and the just the target share potential is what brought Hopkins to Tennessee, along with, some good money, but it's not like they paid him. I think he got 26 over 2. It wasn't some ridiculous deal that they overpaid by a crazy amount. I think dynasty wise, my note would be love Tajay Spears, especially in startup value. Um, I haven't really got him in rookie drafts, like you said. I think you just have to be in the right position to get him. And I haven't really had the pick. I think the pick to get Tajay is 2.9, 2.10, 2.11. That's kind of where I'd feel comfortable. And I haven't really been at that point in most drafts. I tend to trade my second if it's late because I just don't want him. And don't be afraid of Burks. I think people may start moving him down their ranks. And, if someone's selling Burks and you're able to go get him for a reasonable price, whether that's, I don't really know the price. I would, without seeing recent trades, I wouldn't know. But if you're a rebuilding team, don't be afraid to get him on your team, because I still think the talent is there. And I think Hopkins will be okay. I don't think I'm targeting him high in redraft leagues or is necessarily a win now guy, but I think he'd be a great wide receiver 3 flex kind of guy in PPR leagues, because he's going to have a target share and he's a good player. He's going to score. They don't have enough weapons that he's going to be one of their weapons for sure.
Yeah, I like your idea on Treylon Burks. I always feel like the best time to acquire those young wide receivers is year 2. If they didn't absolutely crush year 1, everybody's on the new guys. Who's the new rookies? And the year 2 guys kind of fall off in favor. I feel like that's the best time to acquire them. So like you said, I like that move. I'm acquiring Treylon Burks if I can. I sentiment same on Hopkins. I like him as a flex play. I'm not taking him as my wide receiver 1 or 2. I think he's going to get some targets. I think his numbers are going to end up pretty solid at the end of the year, but I'm not sure I want to totally count on him overall. I'm still in on Derrick Henry. I'm not going to be out on Derrick Henry until Derrick Henry decides he's not Derrick Henry anymore. So I'm on that. You're over on the wins. I actually feel like that's a good bet. I was under in my preseason rankings, but I have to be honest with you, I would not put money on it. I feel like there's too good of an option that they go over and they get to that 8 wins. So that one makes me nervous big time. So I'm sticking off of that. The plus 310 to win the division is actually a pretty decent buy right now. I actually like that. Jags, out of everyone in the division, obviously have the hardest schedule overall. So even if they're the best team, they could still easily go 9-8, 8-9, and then you're getting yourself in a tiebreaker situation. So I like that. So Sam, thanks for coming on and talking about the Tennessee Titans with me. Let everybody know where they can find you at, all your stuff.
Yeah, for sure. You can find me on Twitter at Where's Waldorf. Coming back in August, I will be back on the grind, going to start putting out a bunch of stuff. So I'm excited to get back into it after a little July summer hiatus. And thanks for having me on, JT. I love coming on and chatting with you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me at JT Orange on Twitter. I talk about anything and everything. I do every league. I remind people all the time. I do C2C, CFF, IDP, Dynasty, Redraft, Best Ball. I'm in all of it. So if you got a question about something, you want to get my 2 thoughts, let me know. I will let you kind of know what I think. Also, make sure to follow JT Brew Stew to figure out when we are going to have any of our next shows, or go back and watch some old shows, old content of things we have. Like I said, I have my season-long bet series out there looking at wins, losses, what I think are some really prime bets. I've got a few more things coming down the line. Check us out on the Dynasty Pros Football YouTube channel. That's where you can always find our stuff. Go to dynastyprosfootball.com. You can find our rankings. You can find a bunch of different shows, our IDP show. And also you can check me out on our Devy show, which runs every other Monday with Tommy Harvey and SC Romero. We talk all things Devy. We're currently breaking down each conference and Division I football, talking about what Devy players we like out of there and what to expect. So make sure you check us out on that. Thanks for joining us tonight on The Stew with JT Brew. Make all your draft picks hit and the trading never quit. See you guys later.
You up on trades and wire moves, you ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing, racking up points, makes the game a little more fun to watch.